Welcome back. You're still watching Newsfeed. Now, cybercrime is increasing at an alarming rate across the world and has become one of the biggest threats faced by companies, governments, and even individuals, as the spread of digital technology and connectivity makes every form of human activity vulnerable to attack. Well, to give us the extent of cyber attacks in South Africa, I'm joined in studio by Yaron Assabi, CEO and founder of DSG. Yaron, thank you very much for coming in this morning. All right, so, I mean, cybercrime is an interesting one, and I remember when I first started to read about cybercrime, it was quite a few years ago, and the sort of cost to the world with regards to cybercrime was about $1 to $3 trillion a year. That, of course, that number is sort of escalating, and it was almost relatively low on the media agenda. But, I mean, it is increasing, and we've seen anything from as small as sort of a WhatsApp hack to something that affects utilities and big businesses sort of falling victim to cybercrime.
Yeah, so, you know, I think as we get more and more connected,
yes.
You know, we're more vulnerable, and I think social media has got a big aspect to that. If you have a LinkedIn account, they've been hacked a few times, or Facebook,
Yahoo.
Google shut down Google Plus because of the fact that they were hacked. So, and often I think people use the same passwords that they use to log onto social media on corporate networks, and that creates vulnerability.
Okay.
And cybercrime's increased from $3 trillion maybe 2013 in the last 5 years to, they say by next year it's going to be over $6 trillion. So it's a 100% increase.
Yes.
And I think as Africa gets more and more connected, it becomes a very, very big issue. So
how can, you know, if it is becoming a big issue, how can we sort of make sure we've got digital resilience? Because as individuals, we need our data protected. And then when you're talking about big corporates and that, or even governments, so the information and the funds of big corporates and governments also needs to be protected.
Yeah, so firstly, we need to look at awareness, right? We need to get training and education. And I think globally, there's a huge shortfall of skills in this space. There's about 1.5 million unfilled jobs globally in the cybersecurity space, and they say that it's also going to double to about 3.5 million different stats by 2021. So we've invested quite heavily into creating cyber awareness training within corporates, as well as providing technical training. So just like we need more software engineers, and we need more cybersecurity engineers that have an understanding of what's happening globally and what's happening locally. And simple things like password management, patch management on servers, which, you know, for IT security professionals seem to be quite the order of the day, are not that common within, especially the SME. You know, in Africa, we have 80% of the market served by SMEs. The lack of maturity in that market is huge. I think the banks and the telcos and, you know, the big players all have a chief information security officer or have, you know, a team that would look into this. We believe that the big opportunity is actually helping the mass market and you know, mid-sized companies as well to become as aware and as efficient, because they generally are more dependent on technology than big corporates, you know.
And is this a global phenomenon in terms of not having the skills needed to kind of manage those smaller businesses who maybe aren't so tech savvy as like a big bank, like you say, or even just individuals, like people should be tech savvy, but I mean, generally we aren't.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it is a global problem, and in South Africa specifically, even the big corporates have a requirement for skills that they don't find easily in the local market. So one of the things that we've created is a training facility from very low-level cyber awareness, kind of like a normal employee type of training, all the way up to very technical training, where you actually have practical training. We upload a malware or some kind of an attack. We see how the students actually defend, and we assess them in real time. We use machine learning and artificial intelligence, it's called Cyber Range, to be able to understand their capacity and be able to give them immediate feedback. And then we certify them to be able to become, you know, certified cybersecurity software SOC level 1 engineer or a SOC level 2. A SOC is a security operations center, so they can actually work in an environment where they can be the first line of defense for a corporate or for a mid-sized company.
And I think when it comes to something like cybersecurity, people sort of deem it to be very high grade, and it's something that they can't understand or that they shouldn't need to worry about. And I mean, people in this country worrying about just sort of general home security or, you know, not having their cars stolen or whatever. Now we have to worry about cybercrime.
Absolutely. So, you know, cybercrime can really cripple a business, you know, especially as we become more technologically dependent. You know, even in the operation technology environment, rather than just the IT environment, take Eskom or a utility company across Africa. You know, Joburg Water had an incident recently, and City Power. You know, you could paralyze a country through cybercrime. The World Economic Forum rates it as the 5th largest government and business risk in the world, and the first 4 are natural disasters. So, you know, this is something that we can do something about. It's something that we can mitigate with the right skills, but I think we need to invest in the right skills. And when there's such high unemployment in Africa, I think there's a great opportunity to actually make an investment in cybersecurity, because as I mentioned earlier, there's such a huge demand globally. Imagine not us just serving the African requirements, but also starting to offer, just like we do in the BPO and contact center industry, a lot of UK companies outsourced to South Africa because it's more cost effective. English is great, but cybercrime it's even easier, and cybersecurity it's even easier to be able to offer SOC services here in South Africa for international companies. And we've seen some great South African companies, you know, that have sold into international companies and have focused on the international market, because this is a global problem, not just a South African problem.
Yeah, it would make a great sort of way to tackle unemployment, get people into this kind of industry, because it is the way that the world is going. And I think that's maybe what people don't realize, is that this is not something sci-fi far off in the distance. This is not some guy in a basement with like hacking skills. This is a seriously sophisticated network of cyber criminals.
Absolutely. I mean, my first company, our group is 21 years old, was playing in the e-commerce omni-channel payment space, and every 4th transaction in 1998 was fraudulent. A fraudulent attempt to try and get credit card details or use somebody else's credit card.
And this is before we had banking apps.
Exactly. So imagine now the sophistication of their attacks. And I'm quoting figures that are 21 years old now. So this has been a problem for a very, very long time. As I said, the banking industry is very mature in South Africa, and we tend to be a great global player. But even in dealing with some of the CISOs, the Chief Information Security Officers, or the CIOs of some of the big banks, they're all very concerned that there's not enough skills. There's not enough people that can employ, and they are very, very interested in being able to make the right investment in growing skills in the country.
So I just wanted to read some of these stats that I was given ahead of this interview. 70% of South Africans have fallen victim to cybercrime and other risky behavior, compared to 50% globally. In South Africa, cybercrime has an economic impact equal to 0.14% of the national GDP. That's about 5.8 billion rand a year. And I mean, compared to other countries, these stats are quite shocking.
Yeah, and we're in the top 10 countries that are being attacked. So I think we're number 6, in the world from an attack perspective. I think South Africa is slightly different to the rest of the world. We kind of first world and third world kind of mix. We have a high maturity. As I said, our banking and telco industries are very, very advanced. We are more connected, and because we're a mobile-first continent, a lot of people use their mobile phone to run their business, if you like. They have all their contacts, their calendar. If they have a phishing attack or malware or something that goes wrong with their phones, they could lose all their data. And data breaches are very expensive, and sometimes you wouldn't even know that that you have been attacked, because the cyber attackers sit on your network for months until they find something that's worthwhile, before you actually know that they were there. So it's quite important to create resilience. It's very important to use the right tools, have the right processes, the right training. It's always about the combination of those 3 things. It's not just about technology. Often employees are your biggest vulnerability
Yeah.
because they don't have the maturity. You could have the best firewall, the best SIEM, or the best technology deployment, but if your employees are not aware and they do silly things like click on a phishing email without checking whether it's really the source, the right source, they could be vulnerable to something that will then impact the whole business. So I think in my business, certainly, we are focusing on making this as part of your normal employment contract, KPIs, making sure that governance is being held and it's taken very, very seriously.
Does South Africa have laws governing cybercrimes? Do you know?
So with the ECT Act does imply around information, as you know, POPIA or POPI, the Protection of Personal Information Act, has been legislated, hasn't been enacted yet. They say it's going to be enacted this year, and that's very similar to GDPR in Europe and the California law that's just been passed now in January, where it's the corporate responsibility to look after the data. Because at the end of the day, as a consumer, if a big retailer or a big insurance company or bank has a data breach and your data is exposed, it's not really your fault, and you could suffer huge damage around identity theft. And, it's up to corporates to become more responsible with how they manage consumer data. And POPIA certainly would go a long way in protecting consumers on being on the right side and making sure that also it's all about permission marketing and we manage the opt-in and opt-out around consent management from a marketing communication perspective.
And as you say, you do a lot of sort of training and helping people with this type of thing. If somebody's listening to this going, well, I need to get my act together in terms of protecting my data or my business information, how can they get in touch? Or
So our business is called Digital Resilience. Use that word. Okay, so we specifically called it Digital Resilience, the cybersecurity arm of Digital Solutions Group or DSG. They can get hold of us on www.digitalresilience.co.za. But we also offer SOC services or managed services. So if you don't have the skills internally, you could outsource the service for us to manage the security, manage service on your behalf. And we offer technology solutions like password management within corporates, a solution called LastPass, which allows you to ensure that people in your organization don't use the same passwords they use on social or easy to break passwords. And it makes it easy for IT departments to manage because it's got some gamification. It actually shows you what your security score and how to improve it over time internally in the platform. We offer a SIEM as a service, that's a security information event management solution, and a SOC platform, as well as SCADA solution in the OT environment. OT, if you look at the mines, and we've got a huge investment in mining throughout Africa. You could cripple a mine by shutting down all their machinery, or creating a power surge. And the SCADA world is certainly underserved in terms of operating technology, and we have security solutions for SCADA as well. A product called SCADA Shield from a company called Cyberbit that is really, really awesome and helps you protect your whole environment, not just the IT environment, the OT environment as well.
Yaron, thank you very much. It was very interesting. Yaron Assabi, CEO and founder of DSG, in studio with us this morning, and you heard it here on the channel. There's a big need for cybersecurity professionals in this environment. It is a growing threat, not only to South Africa, but to the world. So if you're out there and you are a tech geek or a tech guru, or you're just looking for something to do, you should maybe look into this. It's certainly an untapped business opportunity. All right, I will be back after the break. We're heading into the final hour of Newsfeed. Your weather coming up next.